they said she died in her sleep from a heart attack. But her bruised neck and scratched arms told a different story. Sita Kaur, a bright and loving mother of 4, had traveled from the safe streets of North London to the ancestral town of Kurukshetra, India. She thought it would be a short family visit. She never imagined it would be her final journey. What began as an emotional trip to fulfill a dying mother-in-law's last wish would unravel into a haunting mystery of betrayal, lies, and a hidden promise no one saw coming. Born in 1982, Sita Kaur was raised in a traditional British Sikh family in North London. She was smart, strong-willed, and independent, the kind of woman who seemed destined for a stable, fulfilling life. Her parents named her after the iconic Bollywood film Sita or Gita, a symbol of strength and resilience. Sita, like her namesake, carried herself with grace and pride. She opened her own beauty salon at the age of 23, living what many would call a modern dream. But dreams can be deceptive. That same year, her family introduced her to a man named Pawan Saini, an Indian citizen who had recently moved from Haryana to London. He worked as a construction laborer and lived a simple life. Pawan seemed respectful, grounded, and eager to build a future. Within months, the two were married. What began as a hopeful union soon unraveled into a decade of silent suffering. The first cracks appeared behind closed doors. Sita endured what every victim of domestic violence silently fears: mental, physical, and financial abuse. Yet she never told the world. Her upbringing, steeped in conservative cultural beliefs, had taught her that marriage was sacred and unbreakable. Divorce was shameful. A woman once married must endure. So she endured, quietly, for 10 years. Within those 10 years, Sita gave birth to 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. From the outside, it looked like a happy family, but inside their home, chaos reigned. The abuse wasn't random. It had roots in something darker, something secret. Unknown to Sita, Pawan had made a disturbing promise to his elder brother Jitender, who still lived in India. Jitender and his wife had been childless for years, and in a twisted act of brotherly loyalty, Pawan promised to give them his firstborn son. When their first child, a boy, was born, Pawan started planning to send him to India. But Sita found out. Horrified and enraged, she refused. She was the mother. She had carried that child. She would never give him away like a commodity. That single act of defiance lit the fire that would burn for years. Pawan's family in India applied relentless pressure. His brother Jitender wanted the child. Pawan felt trapped between loyalty to his wife and obedience to his family. In the end, he chose the latter. As the years passed, Sita gave birth to a daughter, then twins, a boy and a girl. Her defiance only grew stronger. Each time she stood her ground, the tension in the house thickened. The abuse escalated. Her in-laws back in India never stopped demanding. They wanted a male heir. They saw Sita's children not as lives to be cherished, but as solutions to their own unfulfilled desires. And they were ready to take what they believed was owed to them, by any means necessary. Despite the beatings, emotional blackmail, and mental torment, Sita refused to bend. Her family in London began noticing the bruises. They urged her to leave. But Sita was scared, terrified of raising 4 children alone. She feared the stigma of divorce in her conservative community. More than anything, she feared losing her children forever. So she stayed. She suffered in silence, believing her endurance would eventually pay off. But behind that silence, another plan was forming. In 2015, Pawan told Sita that his mother in India was gravely ill. Doctors had allegedly given up hope. His mother's last wish, he said, was to see her grandchildren, just once before she passed. He begged Sita to come with him to India. He insisted it was only for a few weeks. But what Sita didn't know was that Pawan had already quit his job. He had cancelled his car insurance. He had no intention of returning to the UK. The trip was a one-way ticket. Sita hesitated. Deep inside, a voice warned her not to go. Her friends and family begged her to stay, but Pawan was relentless. He used every emotional trick to wear her down. He spoke of duty, of family, of love. He made her feel guilty for denying a dying woman her last wish. Eventually, Sita relented. In February 2015, she boarded a flight to India with her husband and all 4 children. She believed she'd be back home in a few weeks. She believed she still had control, but she had no idea what had already been planned for her. The morning of March 30th, 2015, a phone call from Kurukshetra shattered everything. Pawan told Sita's family in the UK that she had died in her sleep from a heart attack. She was only 33 years old, young, healthy, vibrant. The explanation made no sense. Her family rushed to India, only to be met with a sealed glass coffin and a lifeless body wrapped in blankets. But when they pulled the blankets away, the truth was impossible to ignore. Scratch marks on her chest and arms, bruises on her wrists, and strangulation marks around her neck. This was not a heart attack. This was murder, and it was premeditated. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Something far more disturbing than her death itself. By the time Sita Kaur's family arrived in India, her body had already been arranged inside a glass coffin, wrapped in thick blankets as if someone wanted to conceal something. The local relatives were hesitant, almost anxious. The room was filled with silence, but the kind of silence that screams. Her sister Swinder couldn't take it anymore. She pulled the blankets away, trembling, only to reveal what she feared all along. Long scratch marks on Sita's arms, bruises on her chest, and most horrifying of all, deep red marks around her neck. Sita hadn't died peacefully. She had fought for her life. Swinder screamed. The family exploded in anguish. They immediately accused Pawan and his relatives of murder. But instead of getting help, they were met with denial and resistance. The police were called, but no action was taken. Officials spoke in vague, rehearsed tones. They called it natural causes, even though the bruises told a different story. The death certificate issued by the local hospital left the cause of death column blank, as if the truth itself had been erased. Still clinging to the hope of justice, the family made a desperate request. They wanted Sita's body to be taken back to the UK for a proper post-mortem. They believed that a full forensic examination would prove what their eyes already knew. Sita had been murdered. The police promised to hold the body until the next day. That night, the family tried to rest, hopeful that the morning would bring progress. But instead, it brought betrayal. At 3 a.m., while the family slept, Pawan and his relatives took the body. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't consult anyone. They cremated Sita's remains in the dead of night, without the consent of her parents, siblings, or anyone from her UK-based family. When her sister and parents woke up, they were met with ashes. The only remaining evidence of a possible murder was gone, burned, destroyed. Sita's family was shattered. They had lost her once, in death. Now they had lost the only chance of proving how she died. In rage and heartbreak, they stormed the local police station. They demanded answers. They filed a formal report. But the system was indifferent. Despite visible injuries on Sita's body, despite her family's loud pleas and documented history of abuse, the case was quickly closed. The official cause of death was ruled natural. No arrests, no suspects, no investigation, nothing. Worse still, when questioned about the blank space in the death certificate, hospital officials brushed it off as a clerical error. And when her family challenged the police for negligence, they were told plainly, "It's better for you to go back to the UK and forget about this." It wasn't just a cover-up, it was a complete erasure of truth, of justice, of her story. Devastated, Sita's family returned to London with more questions than answers. But even in their grief, they didn't give up. They hoped that in the UK the authorities would care. After all, Sita was a British citizen. Her life mattered, her children mattered, so they approached the local police in North London and tried to open a case. But they were met with the same cold wall. Because the crime had occurred in India, the UK police claimed they had no jurisdiction. Their hands were tied. But Sita's family wasn't just grieving a daughter. They were fighting for her 4 children who had now been left behind in India with the very people suspected of murdering their mother. The family filed for custody in the UK courts, presenting all the documents, witness testimonies, and medical history that could support their claim. After months of battling through the system, the court ruled in their favor. Custody was awarded to Sita's family, but there was a catch. The children were still in India, and a British court order held no real power across international borders. There were no treaties or legal arrangements in place between the UK and India that allowed enforcement of such custody decisions. Despite winning the legal battle, Sita's family lost the war. The children stayed with Pawan's relatives in India. The people who might have played a role in their mother's death were now raising them. Desperate, the family reached out to their local member of parliament. Meetings were held, speeches were made, promises were offered. But no action followed. Once the headlines faded, so did the support. Left with no choice, the family turned to a grassroots organization called Southall Black Sisters, a powerful advocacy group that fought for women's rights and justice. With their help, a massive file of evidence was prepared. The file included 26 witness statements, records of years of domestic abuse, and even photos of Sita's injuries from the day her body was uncovered. Everything was organized, documented, and handed over to the British Parliament. The case was even presented by MP Naz Shah. And yet, again, nothing happened. No diplomatic pressure, no international inquiry, no justice, just silence. Meanwhile, Sita's 4 children continued to live in the same household where their mother had likely been killed. They were being raised by people who had destroyed evidence, lied to authorities, and showed no remorse. Every day that passed, Sita's family feared those children were not just being denied justice, but also brainwashed to forget who their mother truly was. The truth was being rewritten. The memory of Sita was being buried deeper each day. But this wasn't just about Sita Kaur anymore. Her story was one of many. Jaswinder Kaur from Canada, Ravneet Kaur from Australia, Surjit Kaur from the UK. All highly educated women, all promised love, all taken to India under false pretenses. and all ended up dead. Different countries, same story, same silence, same broken justice. It left a chilling realization. Was this a pattern? Were these murders part of a larger unspoken crime that no one wanted to confront? And how many more Sitas were there walking unknowingly toward the same trap? Because behind each of these stories, one thing was always present. Someone they trusted turned into someone they feared. And if systems in both countries continue to ignore these cries for help, what happens to the next woman? Sita Kaur's story didn't end in Kurukshetra. It didn't even end in the quiet halls of a British courtroom. Her story lingers in every photo left behind, in every tear her parents still shed, and in every child forced to grow up without knowing the truth about their mother's death. Her voice was silenced, but the questions she left behind still scream into the void. How could this happen? Why did no one stop it? And why even today do stories like Sita's keep repeating? By the time Sita was cremated in secret, her fate had already been sealed. But her family's fight didn't end there. Back in the UK, with the help of activists and NGOs, they tried to ignite public outrage. They compiled evidence, told her story to journalists, and spoke at local events. But media attention fades quickly. Public interest shifts, and justice for immigrant women like Sita often becomes a forgotten chapter. It wasn't just about legal gaps, it was about culture, deep-rooted beliefs that told women to suffer quietly, that divorce is shameful, that a woman must sacrifice everything to keep her family together. Sita wasn't weak. She was raised in London, she was educated, she ran her own business. But even she couldn't escape the invisible chains of expectations, guilt, and cultural silence. She thought that enduring abuse made her noble. She believed her silence was protecting her children. Instead, it led her to the grave. Sita's fears were the same ones shared by many women. Fear of losing their children, fear of judgment from society, and most of all, fear of the unknown. Who would believe her? Who would support her if she left? She had no guarantee of protection, just a pile of doubts and a community that told her to endure rather than escape. And tragically, like so many others, she underestimated just how far people can go when they feel entitled to your silence. But let's not pretend this story is isolated. Jaswinder Kaur, another British woman, also murdered after being lured to India under the pretense of a family function. Surjit Kaur Atwal, same story. Ravneet Kaur from Australia, kidnapped and killed by her own husband's family, all of them educated, all of them trusting, all of them betrayed. These are not coincidences, these are patterns of manipulation, cultural entrapment, and cold-blooded execution disguised as tradition. And yet, despite the growing list of victims, systems in both the West and the East remain painfully slow to respond. The UK, despite its global standing, cannot enforce justice for its citizens once they cross certain borders. India, on the other hand, struggles with corruption, social pressure, and outdated attitudes about women's autonomy. Between these two systems, lives are lost in the gray space where no one takes responsibility. There was one case, just one, where justice was finally served. But it took years. Most others, like Sita's, disappear into legal fog with no trials, no arrests, and no closure. Families are left shattered, and the accused continue their lives untouched, even respected in some communities. Meanwhile, the children of these murdered women grow up either unaware of what happened, or worse, believing lies told by the very people who took their mothers away. But what can we do? For starters, we must redefine what honor and respect mean in our communities. It cannot mean silencing women, forcing them to stay in abusive marriages, or shaming them for wanting freedom. Divorce isn't dishonor, it's survival. Financial independence isn't arrogance, it's protection. If society truly values women, it must start listening to them when they say, "I'm not safe." Education alone is not enough. All the women in these stories were educated. The problem is not a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of awareness, support, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Families must stop teaching daughters how to endure pain and start teaching sons not to cause it. Communities must stop worrying about reputation and start worrying about the reality behind closed doors. And what about the system? Governments must do more than offer condolences. We need international legal frameworks that allow for justice across borders. If a British citizen is murdered abroad under suspicious circumstances, there must be protocols, there must be investigations, there must be pressure. Otherwise, passports offer no protection. Citizenship means nothing if it can't guarantee basic human rights. Today, Sita's children are still in India, being raised by the very people her family believes murdered her. The UK courts may have ruled in favor of her parents, but the system has no teeth overseas. And every day those children grow up away from the truth, the deeper the wound becomes. It's not just about getting them back. It's about preserving their mother's memory. It's about telling them who she really was and what she died fighting for. Sita's story is a warning. It's a mirror held up to every society that says, "This won't happen to us," because it will. It already has. And it will again, unless something changes. Her voice was taken, but yours isn't. Speak for her, speak for the women who no longer can. Share their stories, push for laws, protect the next Sita before it's too late. And as you sit with her story tonight, ask yourself, if this happened to your sister, your daughter, your friend, would you still stay silent?